Hello and welcome from Madrid, Spain to Asia and Pacific. My name is Colonel Ramón Pérez Alonso and I'm head of the Institutional Support Nucleus to the International Defence and Security Exhibition FEINDEF, under the auspices of the General Directorate for Armament and Material of the Spanish Defence Ministry. I'm also Managing Director of FEINDEF Foundation, which is the organizer of FEINDEF 2021. Firstly, thank you for being with us, and I wish you all the best, and this time faced as we are with a global health crisis that is so hard to fight. The International Defence and Security Exhibition, FEINDEF 21, is the only large-scale event fully integrated into the defence and security sector that takes place in Spain. It provides unprecedented levels of access to the Spanish and European markets. FEINDEF 21 has established itself as an indispensable forum to seek business opportunities in the field of present and future technological programs in Spain, with special emphasis on the supply chain of the European Union's single market. It constitutes an essential meeting place in the bid for innovation, international cooperation, and knowledge among companies, institutions, universities, and other organizations committed to developing security, dual and emerging technologies to serve citizens. The second edition of FEINDEF, organized by FEINDEF Foundation with the institutional support of the Ministry of Defence and the collaboration of the Spanish industrial associations TEDAE and SMIDE, is planned to be held from the 3rd to the 5th of November 21 at Madrid's International Trade Fair and Conference Center, IFEMA. We have had a good response up to now, and many international delegations from various countries will be attending. In this edition, we are hoping for closer collaboration not just with Europe, but also with the United States, United Kingdom, Latin America, and Asia and Pacific. This next edition will be a big step in the consolidation of FEINDEF as an open and international trade fair, with strong support in the institutional field that will attract interest not just from the defense and security industries, but from society as a whole, thanks to the sector's commitment to contribute to a world that is more prosperous, fair, and sustainable for future generations. Our agenda includes the dissemination of the aims and postulates of the European security and defense policy, a firm bid for duality, innovation, and technological progress, and serving as a bridge to bring international companies together that can generate industrial consortiums eligible for European funding. FEINDEF, a leader exhibition for state-of-the-art technology, has focused its efforts on becoming a safe event. This use of business-safe event technology, implemented by Grupo Metalia, constitutes an exhaustive plan in terms of capacity control, health measures, and traceability of the exhibited material, as well as security regarding indoor and outdoor movements of trade visitors, VIP, and international delegation at the exhibition. For this edition, our incentive for the industry, institutional bodies, and society is to disseminate dual technologies for Europe's future. I would like to thank Major General José Luis Murga Martínez, Deputy Director of Planning, Technology and Innovation at the Spanish Defense Ministries, Navy Captain José Luis Nieto Fernández, Head of the Planning and Control Area at the same Deputy Director. Mr. Jaime Lucas de Pedro, representing the General Directorate of Industry and Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises at the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Tourism, and Mr. Jesús Alonso Martín, Director of Business Development at Isdefe, for the contribution and collaboration in organizing this webinar. Today, FEINDEF360, the online meeting with the international business environment organized by FEINDEF Foundation and supported by the Ministry of Defence, Industry and Foreign Affairs, with the collaboration of Isdefe, a leading public consulting and engineering company in the field of defense and security, will highlight the value of FEINDEF 21 as a catalyst for defense programs in Spain and as an opportunity to boost the defense and security industry employment, talent, innovation, and digital transformation, and the development in the post-COVID era of the sectoral agendas that have an influence on defense and security in the strategic framework for Industrial Spain 2030. Without further delay, I am giving the floor to the moderator, General Murga, who will introduce the various speakers and participants. I hope the webinar will be interesting for everyone.
Good morning to you all, and thank you very much to Colonel Alonso for his introductory words. And also thank you to the organizational group of this seminar. Thank you, you have done a very good job. To frame this online international industrial meeting for promoting our international exhibition, FEINDEF 21, and before presenting the speakers of this roundtable discussion, I would like to address a few words on the responsibilities of the Ministry of Defence and the Ministry of Industry in relation to the defence and security industry in Spain. And I will start by saying that in the Ministry of Defence there is an organization called General Directorate for Armament and Material, which is responsible on the one hand for satisfying the needs of the armed forces in terms of armament and material, and on the other for strengthening the national defense industry. This requires continuous coordination with the armed forces through the Chief of Defense Staff in terms of defense planning, and also a relationship with other government bodies and with the industry itself, which is equally necessary. On the other hand, the Ministry of Industry is promoting the development of sectoral agendas, which include measures to improve productivity and meet the challenges identified with confidence. The aim is to increase industry's contribution to national GDP. Therefore, the document called Strategic Framework for Industrial Spain 2030 envisages the development of several sectoral agendas, among which the automotive, naval, aeronautics, and space sectors stand out due to their interest for defense. In this regard, since 1996, the Ministries of Defence and Industry have been working closely together, mainly in the field of special armaments programs, without overlooking the more immediate objectives in the lie ahead, such as the internationalization, especially within the European Union. The defense and security industrial sector is undergoing a real revolution, which, as in the rest of the individual sectors, will accelerate in the coming years. Today, more than ever, the defense industry continues to maintain its traditional leadership in innovation and knowledge generation, which inevitably spills over to many other industrial sectors. All of this without considering its more strategic aspects related to national security and defense makes it worthy of special attention from the Ministry of Industry. There is no doubt that it is a priority and a strategic sector that must play a very important role in the implementation of the general guidelines of the new policy for industrial Spain 2030 that we have promoted from this ministry with the aim of achieving a much higher level of development and contribution to GDP for Spanish industry than at present. Defense-related industries in the specific sectors covered by the agendas established by the Ministry of Industry constitute an homogeneous group that share a common characteristic: their contribution to national defense. The importance for Spain of these shared objectives, the accumulated volume of investments, and their high technological level make it advisable to treat those companies as a group, with its own significance worthy of individualized analysis and institutional recognition. On the other hand, the defense industry's ability to develop dual-use products means less dependence on defense budgets and a clear opportunity to complement its military activity with civilian projects and foster inter-ministerial collaboration. In this webinar, the Ministries of Industry and Defense will present the opportunities and areas for improvements in the field of the defense and security industry, within their sectoral agendas, always bearing in mind internationalization and with the aim of joining forces, aligning the interests of individuals, organizations, and public administrations in the industrial sector, so that FEINDEF can act as a catalyst for this initiative. The current situation of our defense industry is definitively encouraging. The new programs promoted by the Spanish government, in which the Ministry of Industry is actively participating in the areas of financing, have an extraordinary industrial and technological scope. And it is here that our industry can demonstrate that it is capable of facing technological and industrial challenges with maximum effectiveness and efficiency. The driving effect of these projects on the individual sector as a whole will be considerable. The potential for demonstrating our technologies and capabilities to foreign markets will also be decisive in increasing the external projections of our companies. In addition to these programs, there is the tremendous opportunity represented by the new European Defence and Security Policy Guidelines, embodied in the European Defence Action Plan, with its sights already set on the European Defence Funds and the Ministry of Defence determination to actively participate in joint development programs for future weapon systems such as the NGWS. The Spanish defense technological and industrial base is an essential element in obtaining and maintaining the military capabilities required by the armed forces to accomplish the mission entrusted to them. But at the same time, the European Union wants to lay the foundation of its own defense technological and industrial base, while promoting the competitiveness of its company with the aim of having its own European capabilities and a clear strategic sovereignty. The Spanish economy, like other countries, will be affected by the crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is why it will be very important to take the right measures to emerge from it. It's not the first time that Spain has been able to articulate and agree a solution with Europe and to get out of a crisis of a global nature, and therefore one in which all member countries have to collaborate in line with their national interest. This year, The second edition of the FEINDEF360 International Defense and Security Exhibition is scheduled to take place. With the success of the first edition still fresh, I am sure that the second edition will represent an opportunity for the defense and security industry to demonstrate its important role in the recovery of the sector's activity, always supported by public-private collaboration between administration and industry. The Spanish defense industry has been always characterized by its ability to establish major agreements, nationally and internationally, both with other companies and with public administration. The defense industry will be ready to participate in this international showcase that FEINDEF360 is going to be, and will serve, among other things, to enable both national and international defense and security industries to present their technological innovations with the aim of finding partners and allies with which to contribute to the European Defence Plan. Now it's time for the panelists to introduce their presentation and topics. And I have the pleasure to introduce to you Navy Captain Nieto. He is an experienced officer working in the General Directorate for Armament and Material of the Ministry of Defence. He is a senior graduate of the Spanish and the UK General Staff Colleges, a Harrier pilot, and has a significant experience in planning assignments. He will focus his presentation on defense programs as an opportunity to boost the defense industry, employment, talent, innovation, and digital transformation. Captain Nieto, thank you very much, and now I think the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, General. I am Spanish Navy Captain José Nieto, and this presentation is for our Asia-Pacific partners. And although it might seem that you are very far away, in security and defense matters, the distance is not that great, as I was able to experience during my 1-year-long deployment to Australia in 2013, commanding a Navy warship. So I hope this presentation will put into perspective what the International Security and Defense Exhibition scheduled for November this year can offer to all of us. From our side, our goal is to promote and strengthen further collaboration on innovation by sharing our roadmaps and interests. During this presentation, I will try to explain the main line of actions the Ministry of Defence is promoting to boost our defence technological and industrial base. But before starting, I think it is important to answer one preliminary question. Why is it so important to maintain and sustain a competitive and innovative national defence industrial base? I consider there are two complementary reasons. Firstly, the superiority of our armed forces in complex, volatile, and uncertain scenarios is based, amongst other things, on its technological superiority, which guarantee not only the dominance in all types of scenarios and operations, but a convincing deterrence, which is a critical element for conflict prevention. So, our nations require a strong defense industrial sector capable of designing and developing, mainly in cooperation with other nations and industries, the required defense capabilities of our armed forces. But we also must stress the importance to keep the necessary freedom of action, and therefore the ability to independently operate and sustain our future complex defense systems. Therefore, there is a need to maintain our defense industrial ecosystem, both primes and small and medium companies, at the cutting edge of technology, to make sure they are able to design, develop the required future capabilities, and of course, to maintain the ability to independently operate and sustain them. Secondly, because the defense industry, like General Murga said, is a very dynamic sector which greatly contributes to improve the overall production and employment of our nations, and therefore the well-being of our societies. We are fully aware that the defense industry is able to create highly qualified teams and therefore contributing to increase the added value of our industrial sector and improving its efficiency. Moreover, many of the technologies which are planned to be developed in defense are of dual use and therefore of direct application to the civil sector. One clear example is the aerospace sector, in which all the advances in the military realm will have a direct impact in the civilian sector. But the reciprocal is also very true. Many technologies required in our future systems and capabilities are more advanced in the civil sector, like cyber, Internet of Things, additive manufacturing, new materials and components, energy efficiency, so on and so forth. And we have to create a mechanism to integrate university and civilian researchers and development centers in our procurement process. So, after answering this preliminary question, I will try to explain, like you see in the slide, the main courses of action and the main line of development the Defense Department is promoting to support the required evolution of our defense industrial base. Basically, to strengthen national collaboration with other departments of the state, to foster international and multilateral cooperation, mainly with the European Union, to incorporate digitalization in the development of our capabilities and in the processes at the Ministry of Defence, and finally, to pave the way towards Industry 4.0, Defence 4.0, and Procurement 4.0. So let's start with the first line of action and what actions the Ministry of Defence is taking, national collaboration. In this regard, the Ministry of Defence is supporting, first, aligning the industrial and innovation strategies of the Defense Department with the overall strategies of the government. From the MOD, we must to ensure the required participation in the development of the government industrial and innovation strategies, and at the same time, incorporate the main objectives of those strategies in our defense sectoral strategies. In this regard, the MOD has very recently published its defense innovation strategy, aligned with the principles and the goals of the innovation strategy of the Ministry of Science and Innovation, and clearly identifying the areas of dual and common interest, like artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things, energy efficiency, just to name a few. We are also promoting to establish a clear mechanism for consultation and dialogue with industry in order to identify early in the planning process those areas for research and development. In this sense, we believe we have to improve the use of industrial clusters and associations. The defense innovation strategy cannot be conceived without maintaining a partnership-type relationship with the defense industry, notwithstanding the fact that at the end they will need to be structured by public contracts. The input of defense industry for defining the direction of the innovation strategy in defense capability shall therefore be sought, in particular via these professional associations. These exchanges currently already involve the establishment of shared roadmaps, the implementation of a joint approach of open innovation, developments aimed at making weapons program more agile and receptive to innovation, innovative procurement processes, and joint experimentation. The key to all these synergies is to maintain a shared vision of the challenges and capabilities priorities of the armed forces. On this basis, the companies are working with the department to establish this shared vision, the essential technological developments required to meet the aims of defense innovation. We also, like I mentioned previously, have to be fully aware that many of the technological advances are first developed in the civilian world. This reality requires a different approach in our procurement process and the involvement of universities and research and development centers in our debate of future capabilities. We are also promoting that all major defense procurement programs have to be considered state projects because they are the catalyst of foreign innovation and industrial transformation. And of course, they have a huge capability to generate quality employment. This course of action is very important. And then the Defense Department is making effort to involve other departments, like the Ministry of Industry, in the development of these new defense programs, like the Frigate 110 and the Infantry Combat Vehicle 8x8 Dragon, and more recently, the next generation weapon system. The representative of the Ministry of Industry on this webinar, Jaime de Lucas, my friend Jaime de Lucas, will confirm all of this in his intervention. Finally, the design of new capabilities requires a system-of-system approach to understand how those new capabilities interact with other legacy defense systems. In this sense, the next generation weapon system is a good example of an innovative system-of-system approach. The second line of action is to foster international cooperation and to incorporate in our defense procurement processes the European defense initiatives. We all share a strategic defense environment that is more unstable and unpredictable than anticipated, and therefore cooperation agreements are essential to reinforce the bonds that unite us to our partners throughout the world, both multilateral and bilateral frameworks. This observation also applies to defense innovation, where cooperation enables the sharing of risk of investment between several partners. Cooperation in research and technology is conducted in the framework of bilateral agreements. To name a few, we have bilateral agreements with France, Germany, Egypt, Israel, USA, Philippines, Singapore, India, just to name a few. And also for Spain, multilateral agreements, especially with the European Defence Agency and NATO, or other forums like under the coverage of what is known letter of intent. International cooperation, of course, for Spain is conducted in the framework of the new initiative of the European Commission, in particular, the European Defence Fund. In this regard, Spain's overall defence capabilities development is now more than ever integrated in a strong European ambition in matters of defence. In this respect, Spain intends to contribute to the development of a cohesive, innovative, and competitive European defence industry, in particular via its participation in the European defence funds, utilizing the full potential of the Spanish industry capabilities and those of our technological centres. These slides represent the European Defence Fund, the framework for the European cooperation. The creation of the European Defence Funds will have, we think, a structural impact in the European defence and Spanish technological and industrial base, since the funding that the European Commission has been awarded is a total of 8 billion euros for the period 21 to 27, including 2.6 billion for research and innovation. The feedback from the first 2 years of the preparatory action for this research window has been very positive, and it clearly demonstrates the capability of Spanish players to contribute to these collaborative projects. The dynamic impetus must be maintained, and we are currently involved in the definition of the new program of work for the European Defence Fund for 2021, in full alignment with the Spanish overall defence capability goals. However, and this is important, cooperation agreements must be carefully managed in order to maintain, like I mentioned previously, the required sovereignty in the operation and sustainment of the new capabilities. All these changes will require an enormous effort, And at the Directorate of Armament, we have reinforced our teams dedicated to the multilateral, bilateral, and European affairs. But also our industries partners must adapt quickly to the new situation, where cooperation should be the norm. And therefore, industry requires a shared vision to go from competitors to embrace industrial cooperation. It is not easy. I truly believe the next International Security and Defense Exhibition will be an opportunity to share with all of you our vision and to strengthen the international cooperation on innovation. The third line of action that we are promoting is to take advantage of the new digitalization revolution in the development of our capabilities. In order to develop these smart capabilities, we require to take advantage of the developments in artificial intelligence, big data, sensor fusion, digital twins, so on and so forth. We all know that future battlefields and operational scenarios will be marked by a high level of information exchanges along with immense information density, which will require a great speed of processing and assessing that information. In all dimensions, time, speed, and responsiveness will be a decisive criteria for the successful conduct of operation. And for us, digitalization is the key. Digitalization will provide armed forces with new capabilities and opportunities, both in the physical and virtual battlefields. The spread of digital technology increases information superiority and enhances military capabilities, as well as robustness and responsiveness of armed forces on a network-enabled battlefield. But digitalization will also have a huge impact in the critical area of supporting operations. The MOD is very interested in the following technologies: connected devices, firstly, to improve our logistic efficiency, and secondly, to guarantee continuity of support to forward operating bases. Predictive maintenance of the most sensitive equipment in order to increase its operational availability. Development of digital twins of new systems is critical. Additive manufacturing and its potential implication for the organization of our support. Augmented reality, which also offers opportunities in the field of simulation, training, and maintenance. And optimized management of energy resources, where artificial intelligence might be of help. But also in the domain of administration and support, the National Armament Directorate also wishes to improve its capability for our program offices to promote innovation. The aim is to adopt new processes. So the MOD is interested in solutions to develop capabilities for real data sharing, develop capabilities for predictive analysis, develop capabilities for automate repetitive and time-consuming tasks, having a repetitive workflow, like, for example, the elaboration of financial reports, accelerate and automate the research and identification of the right data, simplify our working environments by offering a complete and integral digital office and by enable workplace mobility, and establish new models for continuous learning using simulation. Finally, our last course of action is to promote the evolution of our industry and our procurement process towards the 4.0 standard. The Ministry of Defence is promoting the creation of integrated project teams incorporating from the beginning all actors, from users to industry experts to procurement authorities and other departments of the state, to assess the best solution for our capabilities. Improving the flexibility to adapt our processes to the requirement of changes. The major proportion of defense innovation funding today takes the form of procurement contracts. Defense procurement is a very rich toolbox that can be used to purchase innovation and to innovate by purchasing. However, several factors suggest the need for a revision of this process, in particular due to the fact that of the acceleration in the revolution of technologies and requirements, the increasing level of uncertainty resulting from the above factors and the reduced ability of our commercials to master all the information necessary to adopt a procurement approach based on a detailed technical specification and the development of an all-inclusive contract, and the increased expectation of reactivity and flexibility during the development phase of our programs to incorporate new innovations. Therefore, our aim is to increase the responsiveness of our procurement processes and the flexibility of the public contracts placed by the Ministry in order to provide better satisfaction of these expectations. The final aim is making weapons program more agile and responsive to innovation, innovative procurement, and joint experimentation. The key to these synergies is to maintain a shared vision of the challenges and capabilities priorities of the armed forces. On this basis, industrial companies are working with the department to establish this shared vision of the essential technological development requirements to meet the aims of defense innovation. Finally, like it is in the slide, the center of our efforts should be the people. Innovation will not come if we don't change the way people think. They need to learn new trades, and they need new education processes and tools. Like you can see in the slide, the Ministry of Defence has approved in the last 2 years very important programs in collaboration with the Ministry of Industry, like the F-110 and the Combat Infantry Vehicle Dragon. And they have been and they are the testbed for these new ideas and processes and to incorporate the last advances on innovation. I truly believe the next International Security and Defense Exhibition will be an opportunity to share with you all of these programs, the advances and the progress in innovation and digitalization of our capability. We have achieved many results in the new project launch by the MOD in the last 2 years, but one project that will deeply transform our procurement processes and our industry and the MOD is the next generation weapon system. This project will improve our overall defense industrial base and will fundamentally change the way we conduct defense acquisition. And just to summarize, to sum up, just a few ideas. The evolution of our defense industrial base is a requirement which we must accomplish in order to guarantee our safety and our security. The industrial and innovation defense strategy is a fundamental part of the national strategies, and therefore a whole of the government approach is required for defense procurement. Dual-use technologies are the key, and many of them are not in the defense sector. A change in the processes of the department with a more focus towards international collaboration and Europe, a more collaborative acquisition process. Digitalization will change not only our manufacturing processes, but the way we conduct operations. And the advance toward Industry 4.0, Defense 4.0 is a must if we want to provide our armed forces the required future capabilities. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be ready to answer any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Navy Captain Nieto, for giving us the opportunity and the vision from the Ministry of Defense of the defense and security industry. And I think it's now time to go to the second panelist, or the second presenter, is Jaime Lucas. He is an IT engineer, and as a civil servant, is developing his career in different positions at the Ministry of Industry. He is assigned to small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, at the Industry and SMEs General Secretariat of the Ministry of Industry. So Jaime will analyze the development in the post-COVID era of the sectoral agendas with an influence on defense and security in the so-called Strategic Framework for Industrial Spain 2030. Jaime, Mr. Lucas, I think now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank FEINDEF to count on Industry, Trade and Tourism Ministry to participate in this webinar. Personally, I visited FEINDEF in its first edition, and it seemed to me a fantastic storefront for the defense industry in general and specifically for the Spanish industry. From Mincotur, we consider very positive that Spain can count on a fair like FEINDEF, open to the participation of companies and armies all around the world, and we hope that it can settle as a reference in its sector, helping and boosting the new European industry policy. Industry is a key sector for the creation of quality employment and for the economic growth in a country, due to its ability to improve competitiveness in the economy, its very important level of investment in innovation, and its high export capacity. In 2019, February, the main guidelines of the new Spanish industry policy 2030 were adopted, and they attend the following objectives: improve productivity and national competitiveness of industry and improve the contribution to GDP and employment, lead the industry by the way of ecologic transition and digitalization, align Spanish industrial policy with the one boosted from the European Union, and give singular attention to the role and contribution of SMEs. This industrial policy moves around 10 axes: digitalization, innovation, human capital, regulation, business growth, financing, energy costs, logistics, sustainability, and internationalization. Everybody knows that public administration must help defense sector because it has some characteristics that make it different from others. For example, the importance of the presence of companies in the national army. Every army interested in buying some system will, first of all, check the presence of it in the army of the origin country. Without this condition, it's almost impossible that a project will be bought by a foreign army. That is the reason why helping this sector will be very important for the exports of it. It is very capital-intensive sector. It's quite common that companies are involved in projects that need a very high quantity of money in their early stages, but that money won't be recovered until many years later. That situation can be unaffordable for some companies unless they receive public funds. Duality. As Captain Nieto said, it's essential to keep in mind that most of projects have lots of components with dual use. This is a very important message that must be transmitted to civil society. Products that nowadays are in our normal life, like internet or GPS, come from military projects. Top technology projects. Following the last point, we should keep in mind that most of defense projects have a very important technological components. And this results in more quality employment with higher salaries and more resistant to the crisis that periodically hit the economy. Always changing environment. National armies are always searching for the way of being the best equipped as possible. This interest makes necessary for every army to be technologically updated at the risk of being out of date. What a few years ago could be considered as an extravagance, like the use of drones, for example, nowadays is a must. These changes involve research, development, testing, and evaluation activities to define the best way of reaching solutions for the detected needs. There is also a fast obsolescence. Again, we must keep in mind the previous point. Continuous change induce the fast obsolescence of many of the programs, specifically those more related with technology, that should be kept updated and sometimes replaced by new versions or even by new systems that suppose a complete disruption with the previous standard. Keeping in mind these points that fits with the axis of Spanish industry policy 2030, it's crystal clear that Mincotur must be involved in the maintenance and development of defense industry, since companies that work in it have a very high added value that contributes in having a much more valued industrial ecosystem. And one of the ways of being involved is by joining Defense Ministry in the organization of FEINDEF, helping the Spanish defense industry. Now let's talk about the importance of Mincotur in helping the Spanish industry. Spain has always tried to obtain the most sophisticated equipment required by its national army from Spanish companies, trying to preserve national autonomy as much as possible. According to 2019 TEDAI activity reports, defense sector generates more than 28,000 employments, with a turnover of more than $7.8 billion, exporting 62% of them. Moreover, 9% of this amount is invested in innovation, and this implies that this sector is always trying to get the latest technology and innovation. What have done Mincotur in the last years? Since 1996, Ministry of Defence and Industry are working together in what is called strategic army plans. These plans involve some of the most important projects in the last 25 years, like F-100 frigates, Eurofighter, Leopard tanks, or more recently, F-110 frigates or the Chariot VCR 8x8. In these 25 years of collaboration, Industry Ministry has invested more than $22 billion. The strength of this collaboration is crystal clear when we see that it has been maintained over the government changes. These programs have been developed by Spanish companies, or in some cases, like Eurofighter or A400M, sharing efforts with two or more countries. Mincotur has been involved in early stages of all of these programs, giving companies the funds that they need until production stages are reached. When these stages are reached, Defense Ministry usually starts with its payments, and companies return the funds to public treasury. During the last years, Defense Ministry has launched a new type of programs called technological plans. These plans are used to test some components considered as critical for the projects, extracting conclusions that could be useful in the procurement of the plans. Mincotur has been involved in 4 of them, 3 related to F-110 frigate and 1 related to the Chariot VCR 8x8. The result of these programs have been considered satisfactory for all the parts involved, and they helped in getting the appropriate material for Spanish Army and in some cases a storefront for the exports of the products developed. Our work during COVID crisis, during these uncertain times in which it is unknown what is going to happen within a few weeks, Mincotur is trying to help industry working even better than before, trying to help companies to continue with their projects, even when most of them have been interrupted or slowed down. Last September 25, the Spanish Aeronautic Industry Board was created, and in its first meeting it was accorded to elaborate an action plan to keep the productive capacities and employment in this sector. These plans should be in line with agreed measures between the Spanish government and Airbus in July the 30, where new defense programs were announced, like the second phase for NH-90 helicopters, and the study of different ways to enforce auxiliary industry. Moreover, a fund for helping the supply chain will be created, and some measures to minimize the impact of COVID crisis in the sector, preserving knowledge, will be studied. What should be done from now on? It's crystal clear that in this time it's more necessary than ever to help the industry, trying to improve the importance it has in the Spanish economy, strengthening its resilience, its competitiveness, sustainability, and capacity of creating quality employment. Besides ongoing problems, we must consider those related to new defense cooperation strategy from the European Union, materialized in the European Defence Action Plan, and permanent structured cooperation projects where Ministry of Defence and Industry are working together. Through the main points in the EDAP is focused in European funds for research and development, in defence and the development of capacities, It should not be forgotten that there are other objectives that can affect defense industry. The promotion of investments in the supply chains or the strengthening or defense single market will be, for example, two key points in the development of European industry. In this context, our industry will show once more that it is able to face technological and industrial challenges with effectiveness and efficiency. The driving force in defense industry over the whole industry sector will be very important, and wide regions will be benefited from this. During 2021, Mincotur will keep on helping the Spanish industry. As its first measure, we can mention the work with FEINDEF, participating in the patronage of the FEINDEF Foundation and collaboration in everything it is asked for. During this year, this plan is to invest more than $800 million in different plans, continuing with the determined support that this ministry is doing. A big part of this amount is for the project of F-110 frigate, which is developing Astillero 4.0 project, based on the intensive use of IT and tools for designing and production. One of the projects in which both ministries are working together is FCAS, that includes some of the top Spanish companies like Indra, GMV, Sener or Tecnovict, and which is considered as a key program for both Defense Ministry and industry sector, since it can lead the way for the sector in the next years. This project is an example of collaboration between companies from different countries, since there are companies involved from Spain, France, and Germany. Finally, we should keep in mind the recuperation, transformation, and resilience plan centered in industry policy and that will have almost $3,500 million of public funds for the next 3 years. In the words of the Secretary of Industry of the Spanish government, Raúl Blanco, this plan is an historical opportunity by the resource we are going to have in this critical situation to turn around this situation with some clear objectives: digitalization, ecological transition, cohesion of territories, and gender equality. Let's talk about the importance of the support to the supply chain. We shouldn't forget that most of the employment in this sector is in the supply chain. In Spain, it's more than 90%. And that if these companies have a good health, they could help the tractor companies in the development of their programs, having the needed components with the best quality and in the right moment, without depending on the decisions of third countries that could be a bottleneck. During this crisis, we have seen and we have suffered the problems in depending on third countries for supply components. We should point to companies in the aeronautics sector, which in many cases are present in civil and military sector. COVID crisis has affected in a very important way civil companies. Some data say that activity reduction is about 37% by the collapse of air traffic. And this situation is affecting mainly the smallest companies that doesn't have the financial muscle to hold on the time needed by the aircraft manufacturers to put new airplanes in production line. These companies were very vulnerable before the crisis, as they were quite far from European companies in the transition to 4.0 industry. Recently, the action plan for the Spanish aeronautics sector has been approved, with the intention of keeping productive capacities and employment in this strategic sector for the Spanish industry. This plan includes helping measures for the supply chain from Tier 2, including the Aerofondo, a fund with a budget of $120 million. The desire of improvement for the army of all countries and the technological development worldwide boost the development of this sector. Now it's time for the Spanish companies to take advantage of it, not letting the technological development overtake them. We should keep in mind that Industry Ministry had been, is, and will be collaborating with Defense Ministry and with defense industry sector to have a strong sector that can fight with multinational companies and that can offer quality employment. And one way to collaborate is supporting this fair, that is the best showroom for the Spanish companies in the global market. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jaime. Thank you very much to both panelists for giving us your vision about this interesting topic of the defense and security industry and their challenges. And I think that it's time to open a Q&A period through the platform. And at this moment, I would like just to pass the floor back to Colonel Pérez Alonso. Thank you very much to you all for attending this webinar.
I'd like to thank the moderator, General Murga, and the speakers, Captain José Luis Nieto and Mr. Jaime de Lucas, for their great expositions. I hope the webinar has been useful and encouraged you to participate in FEINDEF 21. Due to the current pandemic situation, which we hope will soon be overcome, we are working on the planning and holding of an event using health and control measures that, supported by innovative technology, guarantee a safe environment for both health and material and make FEINDEF 21 a safe international trade fair. There is also the added benefit of visiting Madrid and Spain if you wish to extend your stay and get to know our country. Next, I have the pleasure to give the floor to the Director of Business Development of Isdefe, Mr. Jesús Alonso Martín.
Thank you very much, Colonel. The success of the International Security and Defense Fair, an initiative of business association in the defense and security sector, which also has broad institutional support from the Ministry of Defence and the Spanish administration, was evident, taking into account the level of participation and its first edition in 2019, and by set institutional support. The fair had over 10,000 visitors and 48 official delegations from 32 countries. Isdefe, as a state-owned company of the Spanish Ministry of Defence, provides engineering and consultancy services to the public administration and to other international bodies in the areas of technological and strategic interest. Our services are based on experience acquired over a 35-year history and our know-how and innovation at the service of defense and security. As an instrument at the service of our Ministry of Defence, Isdefe will again be present at FEINDEF, carrying out our functions of supporting those collaborative efforts that may be arranged between our ministry and allied administrations abroad wherever we are needed. As we have seen through this webinar, the second edition of FEINDEF is once more the key gathering for armed forces and law enforcement agencies from numerous countries, as well as for the professionals from their various administrations, companies and industries. FEINDEF 21 is going to provide an excellent opportunity to leave behind the difficulties encountered this past year and, as the event's motto indicates, to renew our common drive for innovation, international cooperation and shared knowledge as part of a global response to defense and security. Thank you very much.
I would like to reiterate our thanks to the Ministry of Defence and the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Tourism, as well as our thanks for the support of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and cooperation and the collaboration of Isdefe. And of course, it goes without saying that I would like to thank you all for your attention and your virtual attendance. Many thanks and my best wishes for a speedy return to normality. We look forward to seeing you at FEINDEF 21. Now we are going to watch a video about FEINDEF.